All right. I hope everyone can hear me. Before I go on, there's a few legends in this audience that I want to call out. Mark Organ, his talk is today. I've had the pleasure when I was nothing, maybe we were zero, to learn from Mark. And Greg Head there in the audience. Please give them a round of applause. Come on, we need more energy. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about how to bootstrap a company to 10 million ARR. When we got to 10 million ARR, we had no marketing team. We were 30 people, so I'm going to share that. Lessons from bootstrapping. So first, my journey in startups, all my failures only came from being a part of venture-backed companies. And I'm an accidental entrepreneur in many ways, and chanced into Boast, and as a function of people telling you, VCs telling you, it's a small market, or it's too niche, it's too services. They tell you all this stuff, and we're like, we can never raise money, so may as well bootstrap and sell to customers, get them to pay, and then just keep building from there. So that was our journey. But my journey was an accidental entrepreneur. Also an accidental author. After I left the day-to-day of my company, we sold about 52% to a growth equity firm. And transition out of the day-to-day. And what's funny is all my life I was piss poor and I was happy. Right? I spent my childhood summers in the slums of Mumbai. My mom was from there. I was a refugee of the Gulf War. When we bootstrapped Boast, we built a company entirely on community. We built a massive community. And then we sold the company and I left the day-to-day and I all of a sudden become a multi-millionaire, but I ended up depressed. I became depressed, I face-planted, and I think things came to a head when I was in Romania, speaking at a conference, and probably like at the after party of the conference, we were a few hours from Bucharest at a speaker retreat, and at 2 in the morning, I'm frantically calling for an Uber, and people are thinking I'm crazy, and finally the Uber shows up, and I book a flight to Costa Rica right there, and I go to catch up with some friends. That's how crazy I became, because I felt I lost my tribe, and I realized that, man, loneliness is a thing. It's the biggest killer in North America, at least. And what brought me to sanity was, again, a community of good health and fitness. And so I said, I'm going to write a book on community. And what's really funny is as I was researching and talking to lots and lots of people, I must have talked to 1,000 people, and looked behind the scenes of 100 iconic brands that sustained over time, I found something very interesting. Every obscure idea that eventually became a global phenomenon, from Christ to CrossFit, went through the exact same 4 stages. And so I talk about that in the book, but my community made the book a bestseller on Wall Street Journal. Within a week of launch, we sold 7,300 copies, but accidental entrepreneur, accidental author as well. So my journey, I think, people laugh at me when I say this. I learned about entrepreneurship during the Gulf War. So in the 90s, I was this 9-year-old kid, and the Gulf War hit. And unlike 2023, back in the day, people would come together to form solutions. The security had lapsed, no internet, no phone. I go down to building with my dad, and the first thing I hear is people saying, hey, we'll organize food supplies, and we'll organize shelter, and we'll guard the building. And so each building became a community that coordinated with the next, and evacuated us to safety. And I learned 2 things. One, the power of people in coming together to create impact. They can move mountains if they're united by a great purpose. And the second thing I learned about entrepreneurship, people will laugh and say, hey, how does a war teach you about entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is nothing but turning an obscure idea into impact while dealing with extreme risk, uncertainty, and ambiguity. There's no more risk and ambiguity when your life's on the line. But, as I was going on this rickety bus from Kuwait to Baghdad to Jordan, highway of death, you can Google it, buses were bombed, people were like dead and everything. The adults in the bus, I saw something really interesting. They weren't moping, they lost their currency, they lost their homes, they weren't sure where they want to go. They were laughing and singing and playing the guitar. And years later, when I got depressed, I realized that this is so important. That it's neither the destination nor the journey, but it's your companions that matter the most. You could be on a shitty journey on the way to hell, but great companions will make it memorable for you. The other thing then chanced into startup after startup. You know, your companions matter so much. I didn't finish high school, and I finagled myself into engineering. Most people, kids who don't finish high school, they wouldn't apply to university. I ended up in Canada a few years after the Gulf War, applied to every university possible. Luck and risk are two sides of the same coin. The ones that get lucky are the ones that keep flipping. Risk, risk, risk. So applied to every university. One university said, write some entrance exams, math and English. I did well. I'd send them the past year's transcripts. And they tell me, okay, you can start the semester, and but we need to see your transcripts within a month. And I say, hey, there's political unrest in my country. I don't know when it's going to come. Luck would have it, they never followed up. And without a high school diploma, I graduated engineering degree. Now, when I finished engineering, I didn't want to work a 9-to-5 job. I asked people, what's the best job I could get if I wanted to be a founder or CEO someday? And they said, your communication sucks. You need to learn how to fix it. And I thought to myself, man, I'm not self-motivated. 99% of the people are not self-motivated. Self-motivation is not showing up when you're lying on the beach, but it's showing up when you're repeatedly punched in the face. And I said, hey, if I try a public speaking class and 5 people laugh me off stage, I'm never doing that. So I'm like, how do I learn this then? What should I do? And I realized then that if you want to learn something, just put yourself in an environment that forces you to do that something over and over again. I started applying to sales jobs. Nobody would give me a sales job. I applied to Xerox and some of the biggest companies. But luck would have it, a founder needed cold callers. And so after engineering, my first job was cold calling. And my parents, who are from India, they lost it. They're like, your peers are working at Microsoft and you're making cold calls here. But fast forward today, everything I have is because of that first job. First job working for a co-founder, cold calling, and then startup after startup after startup. I just moved my way up, and then when I hit a ceiling, there was no choice but to do my own startup, and that's what I say. Your companions matter so much. You become the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And so, you know, life was just running and running and running. You guys have seen this probably somewhere on TechCrunch or wherever. But it's like, you know, especially when you're a bootstrap founder, you don't get customers, nobody wants to talk to you, nobody wants to fund you. Life is just difficult, and the personal life kicks in, and you feel like you're doing great, and then life just goes down. And it's like, how do I pay the bills? It's miserable. And, you know, finally, I came to realize this when I was on my deathbed. I ended up getting COVID and getting hospitalized for bilateral COVID pneumonia after we sold the company. So think about it. All my life, I chased society's definition of success, which is what? Money. Let's make more money, right? Money comes, and you know, I kept telling my wife, we'll go to Bora Bora. We'll take everyone to Bora Bora. The due diligence sucks the life out of you. And she said, your kids call you uncle. They don't even know you, right? It's not about celebrating once a year. It's about compound interest on phones down at dinner. Kids will remember the time you didn't spend with them. Nonetheless, I said, you know what, we'll take everyone to Bora Bora. The deal goes through. I book everyone to Bora Bora. 2 days before Bora Bora, I'm lying in a hospital bed on oxygen. My wife's a doctor at Stanford. She's not allowed to see me. People coming in the hospital in spacesuits, 24/7 Zoom. And I was miserable, and I thought to myself, hey, what did I just do? I spent the last 10 years across multiple startups running failure, 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 defining the society's definition of success. And today, if I die, everyone else is going to enjoy that money, not me. And I said, I'll change. But that's what happened, right? So bootstrap company, 2020, 2021, VC back. What is the theme here is more companies die of indigestion than starvation. That's how my life actually progressed. Went from like being this lean entrepreneur, bootstrapped, and then exited, have the company, put a bunch of money in the company, and then turned like that, right? And so think about this, is it's not the money in your bank, but the people around your tombstone that matter the most. And so my lesson 1 for all bootstrapping entrepreneurs is your oxygen mask first. It's like they say on the plane, right? Self-care is not selfish. If you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of your business or your family. If you try to sprint a marathon, you will die. And so a lot of things that you can do is prioritize physical health. Like a lot of people don't do this, but wake up every day and try to work out. Build a support system of peers. Set boundaries from your work. I think it's really, really important. The biggest outcomes on the planet in the startup world, from Dropbox to Airbnb to Shopify, are founder-led. So it's very, very, very important that you look after yourself, because you will burn out. Anything worth doing is a long slog. It doesn't happen overnight. And if you keep sprinting, you are going to burn out. And it's coming from somebody who almost died after 10 years of running when I had the money. And so I wanted to start with that being my lesson number one. Lesson number two is great companies have a great alignment. So get people excited to be the co-author of a massive impact. So going back to that Gulf War, I was a 9-year-old kid. Rambo was huge. I put a red bandana and I was running around. Nobody let me feel like I was insignificant. Great leaders cascade purpose, not just goals. And an example from President Kennedy comes to mind. He was walking the halls of NASA, and at midnight he sees the janitor sweeping the room. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing at this hour?" And the janitor says, "Sir, I'm putting a man on the moon." So that is purpose. Great leaders cascade purpose. And so your culture is not what people do when you're in the room, but it's the actions you take. It's not what you write on the wall. If you hire and fire people not according to your culture. So if you say, you know what, we don't tolerate toxicity, but you keep that salesperson who's harassing everyone and not updating Salesforce because they're closing deals, then people know your values are lip service. So that is very important. Or if you say, you know what, reviews, like deep reviews are really important, but you do one-on-ones with your employees and you're just disconnected, they know it's all lip service. So it's really, really important to embody what you say through your actions. This is how you create culture, right? Your purpose is your forever, meaning why do you exist? What will the world be because of you? Yeah, you're forever. And your vision is what impact you'll create in the world in the next few years. And your mission is how do you do it? And your values is your right now. How do you behave? And that's very important as you scale a company. You know what's funny is, as bootstrappers, when we're piss poor and starving, when you're trying to survive, you don't think about values. As soon as money comes in, and they say this, right? Money doesn't change people, it just brings out the real you. When you start having some money, people just bring out their true selves and your values come into play and you guys start conflicting. So it's very important from day one. This sounds fluffy, but trust me, it works. Your purpose, your vision, your mission, and your values. So in researching for the book, I looked at the traits of hundreds of companies, and I found something very common to cultures that sustain. I call it camper, and if you have camper in your company, you'll have happy campers. It's cheesy, but connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, and recognition. People crave connection. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. They want autonomy, and when you give people autonomy, they run the damn thing. They want to get better and better at what they do. They need a great sense of purpose. Like look at Patagonia, right? They not only ask employees to volunteer, but they give a percentage of their profits to nature preservation. In 2023, with record number of layoffs, people can work anywhere. People are doing solopreneurship, consulting. What ties them to your company? A greater purpose that's beyond your product or your profits. Energy is key. I mean, if there's no energy, you'll just dry out eventually. It's a long slog. So make sure you're keeping that energy alive. What is one of the key jobs of a leader? To build, inspire, and motivate a team to deliver. Deliver is a lagging indicator. How do you do that? Through communication. To inspire and energize people. If you're doing it just to inform people, then send an email. My man Chirag there from Radiant Capital. Give him a round of applause. Awesome. And the last one is recognition. When you proactively recognize people, they keep showing up. People are not robots. You need to proactively recognize them and be thankful to them for what they do. I'll give you an example from Atlassian. Last year, Atlassian's community came together to host 5,000 events. If Atlassian had to put together a team, it would cost them a lot of money. So they have 5,000 super fans who went out there and hosted events. And that didn't take 1 or 2 years, that took 20 years. But it's about thanking people and recognizing them and making them feel valuable that they become super fans and they take your brand forward. Not just internally, but externally. Lesson 3, sales is your superpower. Like I said, everything I learned and what I am today is because of sales. As a founder, it's very, very important to learn how to sell. If you can't get the 5, 10 first customers, 20 customers, nobody can. You can't hire any magic VP of sales to do it for you, because in the early days, you have no product market fit. You barely even have product. You need to talk to customers. You need to figure out what their pain points are. You need to pivot your messaging on the fly. And when you do that, you can create the playbooks for the next few people you hire. You know, a lot of people have this sort of aversion to do sales. And the best way to learn something is not read. There's a couple of books I put on there, but the best way to learn is just do it. Pick the phone and dial. So to make my book a bestseller, I'll tell you something really funny. I interviewed on 80 podcasts in 9 weeks, and they all launched during the week of my book launch. And everyone's like, why are you doing this? This is so crazy. And I said I needed to get my message so fluid that in the beginning, I just started calling, emailing, and being on podcasts that were not huge, and then leveled up from there. But just doing 3-4 podcasts a day, my messaging on the book got so fluid, and that goes for sales as well, right? You're constantly trying to improve your messaging. If you want to be fluid, just pick up the phone and dial, like email people, get on it. The fourth one, I think this is one of the key lessons here, is don't boil the ocean. A lot of us chase shiny objects. As a bootstrapper, you can't afford to chase shiny objects. This is inspired by Mark Roberge from HubSpot, right? And so I added a couple of things here and a stage validation. So there's 4 stages to building a company. First one is validation. As a founder, you're not CEO or founder, you're an individual contributor. Your job is to get 10 people to pay you to try it out, nothing else, right? And you're sticking elbows, you're poking your fingers, and you are an individual contributor. Here, what you're trying to do is, did I have my ICP nailed? Do I have the messaging? Is the messaging with the ICP nailed? And the lagging indicator is, can I get people to pay me to try it out? The next phase is product market fit. What you're solving for here is retention. As a bootstrap company, there's all these metrics around NRR and all this stuff. As a bootstrap company, you cannot afford to lose customers. That's the reality. For me, product market fit is not like some NPS score or any of that. It is, do customers use you, and do customers stay with you? As a bootstrapper, if they don't stay with me, I can't eat. I can't pay the bills. So that is my key indicator. And the leading indicator of retention is engagement. Are they talking to your customer success people? Are they in your product? Are they using you? And now as a founder, you've gone to becoming a manager. You've hired a couple of people. So don't have this airs that I'm the CEO of the company. You're not. You went from being an individual contributor to manager. The next phase is product channel fit. You figure out one repeatable, scalable channel to acquire customers. Here, as a bootstrap company, and maybe this is aggressive, but you can't afford to have a multi-year payback period. Even though you're spending money and the LTV works out, you want to have a payback period that's like less than 12 months and ideally 6 months. We leveraged community, so it was in the sub 2-3 months, even lower. And so that is really important. Do you have a codified channel to acquire customers? Is it paying back less, and the conversion rate from that channel is hitting where you're just getting a constant flow of leads? And here now, you've hired a manager to manage the individual contributors, so you become a VP. And the last phase is scale. At scale, now you go from being a VP where you're extremely tactical to now doing some strategies. 75% of the time, you're putting fuel on fire, meaning more of the one channel I figured out, one product I figured out, one market I figured out, doing more of that. And the 25% of the time, you're trying new things, new products, new channels, new markets. Make sure you just focus, right? So 75% of the time, fuel on fire. I figured out what I'm going to sell, how I'm going to sell it, who I'm going to sell it to. Let's pour fuel on the fire. And 25% of the time, you need to prioritize and be very deliberate who you're going to target, what the next product is going to be, what the next channel is going to be. Focus on that one thing that will grow you. Go slow to go fast. And I say this because There's this empty calories of growth. We run around so much as founders, going to events, conferences, chasing the next shiny object, that big partnership. Just watch out for this empty calories of growth. If you keep adding customers that don't use you, they will eventually churn, and that is empty calories, meaning growth without engagement is meaningless, right? In the interest of time, I'm gonna skip through a bunch of this, but everyone is looking for a growth hack. How do I get more customers? What's that silver bullet? It doesn't exist. Essentially, Elon Musk quote on first principles is a great one. Boil things down to the lowest denominator and reason up from there. And what that means, what he's trying to say is, success is nothing but engagement plus revenue, meaning people are using your product and they're paying you for it, and you keep growing that cycle, and you'll do good. And so when are you not ready to grow? That is really important. You don't have a singular ICP, and you don't have retention. Meaning people don't come to your product to get a specific job done, and anytime they need that job done, they don't keep coming back to you. This is key. Serve one audience well. I talked a lot about focus because it gives your messaging clarity and lifts your conversion. So I'll tell you, when we started Boast, we started trying to sell to oil and gas and manufacturing and construction, and nobody would talk to us. None of my cold calling experience worked. So my reflexes of building community kicked in. We started going to their events, and we looked like two guys who threw on a hoodie on top, or a suit jacket on top of a hoodie, and they were the cigars club. Nobody would talk to us. So dejected, we started going to the startup events, and it felt like our tribe, instant connection. And we started spending more and more time with them, hanging out with them, eating with them, participating in hackathons with them. And we got to understand that market really well. Where they eat, breathe, drink, sleep. What are their pains and goals? Pains and goals are now short-lived, so you want to also understand the aspirations and what stands in the way. And I realized today that when you want to pick a market, figure out, do you have a passion for this market? Because building something is a long slog, and if you hate your customers, you won't sustain. Is it a small but growing niche? Niche down if you can in the early days because you can find white spaces. Do they have a propensity to pay? If they don't pay you, you're done. And then do you have an ease of access? Sometimes we bang our head on markets where we can't access. And in the early days, you just need initial traction. So focus on a market that you have a passion for and you can get some access. I threw some metrics here, but that's exactly what I talked about. Passion, market, ease of access, and propensity to pay. Then figure out their circle of influence. This is inspired by Dan Martell. You have your ICP, figure out who do they follow, meaning who are all the influencers in the space, what platforms, what events, where do they frequent, and who do they fund, meaning what tools or services they pay for. Because those are people that if you decide to host a podcast or events on a sustainable basis, you can invite the influencers to speak. You get their brand rub. In the early days of Boast, when we landed on this startup ICP, we figured that there were no events happening at the time in 2012 where people would talk about tactical advice. It was all high-level CEO talk. And we said, hey, I quit my job. I don't want inspiration. I need tactics. So we started hosting a lot of events. One year we hosted 100 events. And probably a story for another day, but I finagled my way into getting a column called Startup of the Week in the local newspaper. And I threw a form in there saying, apply if you want to be featured. So every week, consistently, we wrote that column. And everyone who applied would invite them for 10, 20% meetups. And the influencers we invited to speak were people they followed, would partner with other providers, service providers to sponsor, and then would distribute that where they would hang out. And so we got the brand rub, the social proof of people who are more influential than us, and we were two people that nobody knew us. So understanding your ICP circle of influence is key. Nail it, then scale it is one customer, one channel, and one market. In my previous company, Hiten Shah was an advisor, and he came in and he asked me, show me your marketing plan. And I show him something like this. He sinks in the chair, goes blue in the face. This company had raised $6 million. And he says, burn those fucking slides down. Your company is going to fail. And I didn't realize why he said that. A few months later, we did fail after burning through $6 million. I realized the value of focus, right? If you try many things and you're mediocre, you're doomed. But if you have one channel firing, you'll build a big company. Ooh, This is a framework by Intercom on how to prioritize your efforts. So like reach, impact, confidence, and effort. How many people am I reaching? And what is the effort involved? That is key, right? If you're trying things that don't have a big reach, don't do it. Focus on the reach and the effort involved. Prioritize based on that. So I talked about how we built a community, and today it's over 110,000 subscribers, but most of our big customers, our partners came from there. Even the Radiant Capital guys who bought 50% of the company came from that community event. Awesome. Make it stick, meaning the more I engage, the better it gets, or the more I engage, the more I would lose if I were to leave. Think about Instagram, right? Like you use the product, your social proof is built in there. You don't want to leave. So there's this concept of mounting loss and accruing benefits, meaning the more I use, the more I would lose, or the more I use, the better it gets. So think about how do you institute that in your product. Showing up consistently is one of the key things. The job of a founder is to be there repeatedly, day in, day out. Your vision, your communication, recruiting, investor relationships, and being the go-to person when things go south. 10 is, if you keep promoting people on tenure versus trajectory, you will become the very thing you set out to disrupt. The government. We have this thing where once we bootstrap and get to a certain level, we want to hire big company people, big company execs. We go towards experience versus trajectory. So make sure you don't make that mistake. Focus on people that have high trajectory that can help you grow. Sorry, the slides are. And so, you know, sometimes hiring people that are a jack of all or a Swiss Army knife, they can stretch a lot further. More doers and less presentations. Have this zero tolerance for toxicity. What is the benchmark of a great marketing leader? Say you want to bring on a marketing leader. If they don't improve your funnel in the 30 days, they don't deserve to be there. You have to be relentless when you're a bootstrap company. What is the mark of a great product person? You hire a product leader in the first 30 days, if they're not talking to every single customer you have, there's a problem. You want people who don't spend time in spreadsheets, but out in the field. And so that's why I say I have this disdain towards big company execs because they operate at a different level. The Navy is right for a certain time, but as a bootstrap company, you want more doers, you want people who can stretch multiple ways because you are trying to pivot very fast and do multiple things. And the last one is obsess about the leading indicators. And one of the key things here to think about is what are the leading indicators of your business? For retention, it's engagement, right? And so make sure your employees are engaged, your customers are happy, and you don't run out of money, and you'll build a great business. Awesome. Sorry I hijacked the last few minutes here.
Thank you, Lloyd. That's it for you.